Watch the ride.
So I've got this bike on loan from Lex Moto because they also sell UMs, and this is only the second cruiser I've ever ridden. The first one was a Triumph America, and it literally was for probably a mile. I don't remember much of it, so when I got on this, it kind of felt completely new. I didn't remember anything from before. And there were some weird things about riding these sorts of bikes that I'd not experienced, I didn't remember from riding them before, and things that I hadn't realised. Like, for me, being a person that rides normal standard bikes most of the time, well, all the time, I always got to put my feet down. If you can see, normally on a bike, pegs are sort of straight down. On this, they're forward. On cruising bikes, they're forward rather than down. For the first quarter of a mile or so, I kept wanting to put my feet onto pegs that didn't exist and like nearly putting my foot into the ground. So if you do ride one of these bikes, you have to remember that you put your feet forwards. And the other weird thing is that when you're braking with your foot, with a rear brake, whereas with a normal bike you push down, with this again you push forward, so it's almost like it's got a car foot brake. On this it's got link brakes, so when you hit that back brake you actually get front and back, and it's actually quite a potent combination of braking. There's no one behind me from 30. Back tyre chirped. But yeah, it's weird to put your foot out like that. Now the other end of the weird seating position thing is, other than your feet being forward, is the sort of upright in an armchair, not really well, I don't really have to hold the bars, I'm just I don't feel like I'm bracing myself with them, I'm just kind of holding them. It's very relaxed and quite calming. Also having to get used to how much this thing can actually lean, because obviously these styles of bikes you can stick the pegs into the ground quite easily, or at least if not the pegs, other things, but it's a good laugh. The other strange thing is the rake of the front wheel, where this thing seems so long, and it seems to really steer from up front, so when you turn tight corners it actually seems very manoeuvrable, but it's kind of weird feeling. Like, it's sort of, the bike follows the front end around. Maybe it's just something about well, obviously the bike follows the front end around. I know all bikes do that, but it's very difficult to put into words what I'm trying to say here. But you kind of, maybe it's just because of the way you're viewing it. This is obviously a 125, so it's never going to be the fastest thing in the world. And this actually hasn't got a full 15 brake horsepower. It's got less than that. This is the same engine as the LXR uses, which is interesting because this is it seems like a pretty heavy bike, and it's still pretty peppy. But maybe it hasn't got a great top end. That's something I'm going to find out in a future video. Top speed run of the Renegade Commando. But actually, for all the weirdnesses, it's actually quite intuitive, or it is to me anyway. Maybe I'm at an advantage that I've ridden God knows how many bikes at this point. But as I say, never of this style. And you'd think that it would make more of a difference, but I don't know. It's interesting. I'm actually really glad I decided to borrow this as my next review bike, because it's, as I say, it's not something that I've really experienced before, and it's interesting to experience new things and understand stuff. Very descriptive, I know, but you know what I mean. Another weird thing is you absolutely never know how fast you're going, because to look down at this speedo is deathly. They call dials idiot dials for a reason, and that's simply that by looking at them you're not looking at the road. But to look at this speedo, you physically have to you can't glance down, you have to move your head down to look. And it's also very confusing because there's very small numbers, kilometres on the outside and miles on the inside, so it's a bit weird, but I do know that straight ahead is 50. So we can kind of work out if we get up to 70. Oh man, that sucks. No, I'm not going to jump over. It's a frigging train crossing, idiot. But I will now be stuck here for an amount of time. What's to mention about riding cruisers that's different from other bikes? I think I've covered most of them. You'll probably be able to pick them out better than me. I mean, I'm still getting used to this thing. Was bound to be some other oddities that I won't have thought of yet. Filling it's going to be weird, especially with this matte paint. God, I don't want to spill anything on it. I can understand how people of all heights can ride cruisers though, because obviously for short people, you've only got to get your leg down there. It's not very far away. I can always touch it with my arm. But for tall people, because of the seating position, your legs can be extra long and they'd still be plenty of room for them. You're not bending your knee, back on yourself like on the sports bikes. So it would seem like cruisers are a bike that anyone of any height could ride, which is not something you can say about bikes generally. They normally have, if it's a sports bike, you can't be too tall because, God, does it get uncomfortable. And equally, if it's something like a dirt bike, you can't be too short because you just won't get your feet on the floor. I mean, I'm 6'4", and on my DRZ, my feet just touch the ground comfortably. If Reno gets on it, she's not very tall. Her feet just dangle in mid-air, just past the pegs. It's quite funny. So yeah, if you ride a cruiser style bike, or you know a lot about them, or have ridden them in the past or whatever, I'd be interested to know if you can think of any sort of unique things about cruisers compared to other bikes that other bikes either can't do or don't do as well. Like now I've learned about the pegs thing. If someone's about to ride a cruiser for the first time, I will say to them, by the way, your feet go forward, don't put them down, don't put them down. Because you could actually do yourself some pretty nasty damage if you manage to just, stomp your foot into the ground. But I did have a little chuckle to myself when I thought about someone who always rides a cruiser getting onto a sports bike for the first time and just having their feet out like that, like, oh yeah, they're not there, are they? It's weird, it's very hard to put your finger on. It's something about this low down tippiness. It actually quite fun to ride through corners, which is obviously not something that they're known for being good at. But then this isn't a big, giant, heavy, 1.2 litre hog. This is actually quite a light little 125. Well, comparatively light. Okay then, so into the Spicy 110 training ground. This is the location of all of my how to ride videos about how to pass CBT, slow control stuff, all of that. Playlist on my channel called videos, tips for new riders, something like that. It's very helpful. It's got, I think at this point, hundreds of people through their CBT and even people through the A and other license levels. Now, this is actually surprisingly easy to do on this bike, although it does seem a little harder to balance, maybe. It's also a bit different because if I want to ride the brake, I'm actually riding the front and the rear because obviously I have linked brakes. But that is full lock. Oh, can I do it? Oh, I'm never as good to the left. Never as good to the left. It's something I need to work on. But that's it. Don't. Your feet are stuck on the pegs. You only have clutch and throttle to keep yourself up. Accept that. It's actually a lot harder because I've got to kind of like lean forward because the throttle's so far away. But yeah, okay, so the manoeuvrability of these bikes is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Can we get it through there? Oh. That would be hopeful. I did have to put my foot down, but we will make it. Whoa. Let's try stamping on the rear brake. Okay, we do actually get the rear to lock up like that. And the front is a powerful brake. But this definitely seems to have a bias, like, front to back, depending on which brake lever you use. It's interesting riding different styles of bikes and the different ergonomics of them and how that affects what you can do on it. I have some misconceptions about the way that this sort of chassis would turn and what it would feel like manoeuvrability wise. Obviously this is very light, so that makes this a lot easier than on something that weighs an absolute ton. But in my experience that actually isn't entirely true. It's not the weight so much as your confidence to know that you can balance it. Now, if you found this video useful, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be doing a review on this bike in the coming weeks. I have it for a while on loan. Oh, very close to getting that peg to scrape. Are these just rubber on the bottom? Oh, they are. Anyway, I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this video and the other content on the channel, please consider following the links in the description to show your support.